just moving on to another issue, we saw that the CBK this week released the National Payment Strategy 2022 to 2025. Before this, I think the second one, we saw one in 2004 to 2008, and we saw pretty interesting things in the report from Dr. Njoroge, and this actually comes, I think, a week or two after the conversation. They issued a discussion paper on digital currencies, and we had a heated up conversation about that and how it relates to banks and of course mobile money. If you want to check out that conversation, click up on the pop-up banner and you can watch that.
Editing.
Now, anything for our viewers and listeners. Now, guys, looking at this, for me, one of the things that stood out in that whole report is actually in the whole strategy is actually checks. That stood out for me because I was looking at the numbers in terms of check to GDP, the value of check to GDP. And I was finding that in 2010, so the value of checks, so the total value of
payments
checks
made via check.
Yes.
Okay.
Vis-a-vis the GDP.
Okay.
So you find that in 2010 was around 57%.
It's declined,
Coming to 2015 was 42.
Yeah.
In 2021 is actually 22%.
Yeah.
So it's been coming down. And then I was reading that strategy paper, and at the same time I see that on Monday the Bank of Botswana, which is the Central Bank of Botswana, you can see, has said that they'll stop using the government, so in the whole economy, they'll stop issuing checks as a method of payment as of 1st of January 2024. So now I'm thinking, actually, probably you should do away with checks.
Because Botswana is doing it.
Not because Botswana are doing it. Because, so this is actually an experience. Towards the close of last year, I did some work and someone paid me via check.
I remember that.
You remember?
Yeah, I remember.
And how I really, because I needed those tunes like
yesterday.
Yeah. Like I really needed that tunes. So I'm looking at my phone. I've deposited in my bank. So I'm looking at the app, the bank, and I'm like, hey, these tunes. It's taking around 3 days, for to be processed. And then it was a check from a different bank. So that takes a lengthier time than if it was a check from the same bank. So for me it was like, when they were writing me the check, I was like, who still uses check? I mean, send me through RTGS or EFT, just send me the money. So I was so frustrated, and I was like, people should just do away with checks. But then just to balance the equation, I'm also, check is one of the safest actually. Because when you probably in some organizations you require a signature or more than one signature. So the 3 people can put their signatures in that one check, or 2 people, then you go in and cash it. So it's a very secure. So payments must really be done if these 2 or 3 people agree to it.
But even you can achieve the same level or even more level of security, high level of security with digital systems.
No, you also have, I don't know whether you guys use online platforms. Banking online platforms, it still works the same way as a check, whereby you have to have like a 3, depends on your approval. So payment systems, so you have things like, let me speak on NCBA. So you have a platform where you have to go through approval system. So you have like maybe 1 approver or 2 approvers. So you have the initiator of the transaction, and then you have an approver. Yes. So it still goes through that kind of
the same. But it's faster than the check.
It's much faster. And also the risk of the check is that the check could be post-dated. Remember? So maybe the individual doesn't have that money right now, and they expect the finance money to come in 3 days from now. So they put the date for day 4. 3 days from now. Day 4. So the money checks it on day 3, and then day 4 they have some funds. That's
probably also my check delayed.
Maybe that's why.
I mean, I'm looking at it, and there's also that risk of the check. You see the way there's usually that meme of the dog ate my homework. So probably if the dog eats your check, so that inconvenience of
trying to get the money. I think it's very interesting that, not interesting, it's a reality that the value of checks, to GDP decline because individuals are shifting, people are shifting. People in this sense, I'm talking about individuals and institutions and banks and all that, companies. People are shifting from using that to now real-time exchanges. So it makes sense why everyone's shifting away from that, because it's difficult to get all these three people. I've experienced that as well. I told you, biashara, so you hustle. You have to, you're waiting for CG, this guy to come from Mombasa to come and sign.
Are you talking about earlier?
No comment. But there's a shift now, and that's what I think CBK is trying to allude to, because I read the report. They weren't explicitly talking about, like doing away with it, but also the threats towards checks, or just showing the trend, just so that it opens up your mind for you to realize where are people what payment channels are people using now.
Because even cash has gone down.
Yeah, cash has gone down as well. I saw that also in the report. So they're just trying to open up your mind. I don't think they explicitly were trying to put it out there like, okay, mobile money is cannibalizing all different things. They're just trying to open up your mind and just make you aware and understand that yes, this is happening, and now this is why we are trying to come up with this payment strategy. My only critique of the report is that they had so many nice statistics, so many nice graphs, but when it came to the payment strategy, it looked like a SWOT analysis.
I saw that. Actually, it was a SWOT analysis.
It was,
that should have been the chunk of it.
I was looking for more examples. Something that's more concrete. Something more concrete for me to appreciate why this is happening. The SWOT, yes, I appreciated it, but I just felt like when you look at it from an example standpoint, like bring up maybe the Botswana thing or other countries, what are other countries doing?
But they did that very well with the central bank
digital currency. I know, but the payments, it didn't come out as well. The digital currency space, I loved it, but the payment side, I don't think it came out as strong for me. And even before reading the report, there was all this conversation on news outlets that they're talking about M-Pesa, like, directly speaking about
and
M-Pesa.
In the report, they didn't mention
M-Pesa at all. But you see, as I say, they're just trying to open up your mind and say, okay, fine, there's this other channel that is monopolizing this market. So how can we, I don't know.
CBK was talking, but they weren't talking directly to someone. So.
And apparently, I read that M-Pesa is regulated, isn't it?
It is.
It's by CBK.
It is,
So it's not a bad thing.
They were... I remember there was quite some debate on going on Parliament as to whether it should be or should not be regulated. I'm not so sure how that went.
Yeah,
I think for me, I'm not sure if they're regulated. I think there is some quasi-regulation that's happening. The debate that's currently on board is now when the Safaricom should split the business, the telco business and the mobile money business, so that the mobile money business is with now the lending platforms that they have inside there, they will now be regulated as a fintech. Like what the likes of Kinapezesha are now into that bracket.
I like that you said it's quasi-regulated, because by working with banks, there's some level of regulation.
Yes, because the products that are there, like Fuliza, they are regulated by the CBK.
Yeah, and also M-Pesa dominates the market, about 98%.
98%. Huge.
And I was thinking to myself, how do they... And that's what I was saying, so a SWOT. I didn't feel like it was concrete enough. Like, how are they going to take away these individuals who use M-Pesa and entice them to move to another?
Yeah. Probably it's because, so in the report, they highlighted that, sorry, that person again, they highlighted that soon the treasuries and the CBK are working on a digital finance policy, which is in the final stages and will be coming out. So for me, I read the whole report, then I was like, so something, haven't gotten everything, so probably it's in that digital finance policy that's coming. I don't know.
You're hoping?
I'm really hoping. Do you think that, one of the huge things that the report spoke about is mobile money and the issue of choice, and they used the word choice, and they used it very well.
You asked, sorry, interrupting.
Yeah, no problem.
You asked about why it's 98%. This M-Pesa is so dominant in this market, right? So what I said about what I talked about in my highlight was that the central bank is coming up with a method of integrating the systems such that if you have the exactly choice.
Yeah.
When I go to to a shop and now I have to lip an M-Pesa, I can lip an M-Pesa using my Airtel number or card, whichever. So that given, because they also talked about reducing the market share that Safaricom has. That they were very explicit. They were like, this player is very dominant. It has to be. They have to be reduced. Their market share has to be reduced. So how they are doing that is by making it optional to decide on which. Because most of us have the cards for Safaricom subscription because of the M-Pesa. Or am I speaking for myself?
Yeah, I mean, and it's the dynamics, the economic dynamics have made it in a way that the choice factor is actually serious. Because today, in how our economy is structured, if you don't have M-Pesa, it's like you're disabled. Because everyone everywhere uses M-Pesa. It's how do I pay you? So let me send you tunes via M-Pesa. What? So everything is revolving around here.
Yeah.
So now the choice factor really is you don't have a choice if you don't have this. So you find that even some of my expatriate friends, when they came to Kenya, one of the first things they got is a Safaricom line and registered for M-Pesa.
Exactly.
And I'm looking at this also from a risk perspective. So if M-Pesa today, you see, last year we had around 2 or 3 breakdowns of M-Pesa. If there's an M-Pesa breakdown, the economy stands. Because you walk into a supermarket and lines are not moving because the Lipa and M-Pesa and the processing and everything is still. Sending people money, everything is just not moving. So I'm thinking to avoid the risk is also a choice. If you have another choice, you can avoid the risk of the over-dependence that we have in the economy.
But why do you think people are over-dependent on M-Pesa? It's because of the Safaricom line.
Yeah.
No, it's a Safaricom because you still have Airtel money.
Yeah.
And even some supermarkets, when you go, they have the Airtel.
You can pay.
You can pay via Airtel money.
Absolutely.
You still can.
What comes
M-Pesa in the Safaricom line. They captured people because when did Safaricom
exactly
we were just sitting there. So Safaricom came into the market when?
In 2000?
In 2000.
1999, 2000.
M-Pesa?
2007.
It's a whole 7 years. Airtel, it used to be called Kensel.
Yeah.
Kensel used to be the most dominant before.
Yeah.
Kensel was the first.
Yeah.
It used to be the most dominant line before. What happened? Why did people shift to Safaricom? Because people shifted. We have to understand the choice factor and also the reasoning behind the individual. Why do people shift their mobile network to Safaricom? Why? Is it because of better coverage?
Connectivity,
it's connectivity. Connectivity.
Network,
so that's what captured people.
Yeah.
And then M-Pesa came 7 years later.
Because Airtel was basically focused on cosmopolitan areas.
Main towns,
Yes, then Safaricom now came and went to Shags.
So I think it's almost like punishing Safaricom. That's why I'm bringing it up. It's almost like punishing Safaricom for being more innovative.
Punishing success.
Yes. Because in all honesty, they have been fast movers on everything.
Yeah.
It's not...
And it was a risk at the time they were doing it.
It was a huge risk.
It was a huge risk. They had the fast mover advantage. It was a risk.
Yeah.
It went really well for them. So even if they separate M-Pesa and Safaricom, M-Pesa will still be an entity. When you said about paying even in Safaricom, not Safaricom, on Lipa and M-Pesa. Lipa and M-Pesa is a product of?
Safaricom.
Yes.
M-Pesa.
Everything, pay bill is a product of Safaricom. What do the other mobile networks have? We need to understand what they have.
Because it's an issue that I don't even know what they're called.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we've had a conversation, and T-Cash by Telcom, we've had a conversation with Vista about how if you separate the business, there won't be any changes because your M-Pesa account is pegged on your Safaricom line. So as long as you're still using your Safaricom line,
a couple of years back, they made sure at least you can be able to send money across the network,
and you can,
and you can
absolutely.
So at least that was something that was beneficial. But now, when it comes to completely separating the business, it doesn't make any sense. Like, because you're still tied onto your Safaricom line. So unless they're saying it's going to be like an app,
they have the super app. I don't know if it's.
And then now Safaricom, I would imagine.
They have the super app.
Yeah, true.
But then, for me, from the way I'm looking at it, is that they'll just split for purposes of regulation. So M-Pesa would still be pegged on a Safaricom line, but then you'd have them as two different entities. The same and still under Vodacom, but you'd have M-Pesa as a different entity, business entity, and Safaricom.
And then as an app. M-Pesa as an app.
Yeah. But then you can still use the toolkit. They'll just be shared services.
So you can, by the way, that's true. Because if you use M-Pesa, if you have separate the business, have the app, and the app can be used on any phone, even if you're using Airtel or Telecom.
Yeah.
So, but then you can use Airtel Money to use M-Pesa.
Yeah.
But as you said, you still have the toolkit on the other Safari. So it doesn't matter. So if the app
look at it this way, collapses. So the difference is the only difference I'll be seeing is that Safaricom will announce their results in March. So if they separate the business, we'll just have that Safaricom is announcing their results differently
M-Pesa.
from M-Pesa. That's the only thing I'm seeing.
No, but why are we punishing innovation?
For me, I don't see it as punishing. For me, I'm really serious about the risk factor.
No,
I'm really serious, and I've said this before in the podcast. If M-Pesa breaks down, brings the economy to its knees, and it shouldn't be.
So
that
what
way.
is the alternative?
Yeah.
So the alternative, I can't say I have the alternative 100%. This one of the things that has actually come up is the Lipa na M-Pesa. So you see the way these products, the way they're structured. So now initially the send money product service was now that you could only send Safaricom to Safaricom. Now you can send Safaricom to Airtel, Safaricom to Telcom. And vice versa. So that was diversified. So now Lipa na M-Pesa is another thing. So I'm seeing that all of these products, let's do it that way so that we reduce the risk, the overdependence.
If someone has been so innovative to the point
you're pulling that card, eh?
They capture they address all the needs of the not all the needs, but the needs of the chunk of the market.
Yeah.
They've got to be rewarded for it. Until another player
at what
comes.
expense?
I wish I could.
Oh my God.
I
know you own the counter.
Until another player comes. No, I own the counter, but I really hate I don't like Safaricom that much. The services.
Oh, the services. Why?
The returns are good.
No. Services, why?
M-Pesa transaction charges don't make sense to me.
They're expensive.
Yeah. And that's something even the CBK is addressing, is seeking to address. They should.
But then your dividends are coming from there.
Which is why I like it from
I think
point.
My only challenge with Safcom is when I buy, that 1 GB and then after 2 minutes I get that bundle below 2 MB. So that's where sometimes I'm not happy.
But I'm still trying to wrap my head around how CBK, that payment strategy is going to.
Yeah.
Because they had specific goals.
Yes.
There are specific goals that they want to have. But I'm trying to achieve by 2025. But I'm still trying to figure out how they're going to deal with the mobile money.
Probably. So when we had the conversation about the digital currencies, we explored different ways in which the digital currency could be implemented. And I'm thinking that that's the only tool, perhaps the only tool they have to be able to address the over dependence that we have on particularly M-Pesa.
But the underlying infrastructure is still Safaricom's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but then even the conversation about digital currencies, it's still sort of an open conversation because they haven't narrowed down to specifics. Of course, it can't be done in one day because there are different countries who have done it differently, different models. Yeah. So it's still something to be explored. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Do you hold the Safaricom counter?
No, I don't.
You should.
I don't invest.
From that spirit that you have.
I do not invest in NSE.
Tell us about that one.
What is that reason?
The returns.
Okay.
The stock market is the stock market. It can act a movie for you.
Character development if you're not.
I once bought KQ. You remember when KQ went to 10 shillings?
Oh God.
So many bought. I'm like, trajectory.
It can only go out.
We are going. Yeah, I just cut my losses.
2 shillings.
I've had horror stories from some individuals with big money, and you're like, it's gone up to like 20 and you're like, oh, it's going to go up. You buy at 40, the next time it's 1 bob. And you're like, oh no.
In fact, let's
and then one of the things which I also don't like about the NSE is that a lot of the companies have such external influences that you don't understand. You know, the transparency for companies here is not as much as abroad. Some things could impact the company just all of a sudden.
That
you don't know. No one foresaw.
There's an investor who's a fan of the podcast called Cole Tasker. I think he'd really love that statement because there is from conversations with him. There's so much external factors.
There's so many external factors that influence these companies and stocks rather. And I'm like, okay, no. I'd rather focus on bonds. Safer for me.
Well, that's all you do.
Bonds. I just do bonds. Bonds, invest in bonds, and also in money market funds.
MMFs.
Which MMF are you in? Oh no! She can't say that. She can't.
Okay.
Okay. But that we'll have that conversation off air. I mean,